Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. As children, we face many situations that seem very scary. Starting a new school, going to summer camp, trying out for a sports team, just to name a few. Even as adults, we find these situations unnerving. We find the events to be intimidating, overwhelming, and filled with anxiety, and it is often difficult to find ways to deal with them in a healthy and positive way. It is often easy to tell someone to build their self-confidence in order to deal with these situations, but it is quite another to show them how to do it. Enter author Sharon Leino. Through her book series, The Adventures in Lusair, Leino tackles a variety of emotions that students often experience: fear, not listening, anger, and grief, and presents them in a way that students can understand. Her characters are relatable, often working their way through situations that students may be experiencing as well. So let's welcome author Sharon Leino to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, no, I'm very glad to have you on with us because, again, we're talking about, in this age of mental health especially, we're talking about something that a lot of our students deal with on a regular basis and different situations that they deal with, and one of those being how to deal with anxieties and the different forms that anxieties take place. So I think your book series is right on time to help our students to work all those things out.
Well, the Scaredy is written where they go into a fantasy land. And the reason I use fantasy is because children have great imaginations, and great imaginations need to be developed. In developing that imagination, you problem solve. And whether you're a child or an adult, you need to be able to problem solve. And so the characters, Rudy and Billy, go through a lot of experiences in this fantasy land to learn how to overcome being timid, being afraid, and just trying to work together and trying to understand what's going on.
And you mentioned the book Scaredy, and to our listeners, that's the first book in the series is Scaredy, and that's the one that deals with fear. I think as the book opens, there's a scene of this bullying scene that's taking place, and with Rudy, and then of course Billy comes to his rescue. And I'm not going to give away everything in the book, obviously, but
right.
But I think that's a scene that a lot of students can relate to. That they are, or they may have their own bullies that they're dealing with on a daily basis, and hopefully maybe they have that friend of theirs who knows Taekwondo, who can be their protector and so forth. But even beyond that, what I took from that whole situation was not that he has a friend who can be his protector, but it was a friend who can be a reminder, because throughout the entire book, that book, he was reminding Rudy that you know this. You know better. You have the skills, and kind of being that encourager for
Yes.
Rudy. And I think that's just as important.
I think it's very important that parents be aware of their children's friends. Not that you're going to pick your children's friends, but be aware whether those friends are supportive or whether they put down their friend puts them down, which is not healthy. I know it sounds like a little controlling, but when young children have to face the different fears that they have in this world today, because they receive so much information from the internet, so much information from the news, and that we as children, or I as a child, did not receive. So I was more or less protected, but it brings out fears. And if you see that their friends are making fun of them, I think it's very important for parents to work with those friends to try and show them that, we really need to support each other and not make each other feel inferior.
And I think that's really important, a really important point to make there, that if they're going to be quote unquote friends and not just acquaintances or people that you happen to come across, then yes, you should be giving put ups and not put downs, and you should be there to lift each other up and to encourage each other. But I wonder if, or how much of your background, your childhood, is in these books. I know that you are the oldest of 11 children, so I'm sure you may have actually played the part of Billy in some parts with your younger siblings coming to their rescue. So how much of you is in this book?
Probably quite a bit, especially the part of Rudy. As a young child, I was very tall. I was probably the tallest child in the class of the first, second, and third graders, all of them. And I was very skinny. I don't know if you remember Olive Oil, or you may be too young, but I was called Olive Oil a lot, and that did not help my self-esteem because, I learned to overcome through just plugging through. And I had good friends, and my parents, my mother was very supportive of me. And, your parents are so important in making a child feel confident and making a child feel safe. And I just can't stress that enough. Now, my younger brothers and sisters, I don't know, maybe I was a little bossy at times, but it was a wonderful experience. We had a wonderful, large family, and each one of us felt spoiled in some way.
Now, you talked earlier about when we get into or try to get through a situation and do some problem solving, that we tend to use our imaginations because we have to think of a way to get out of this and imagine ourselves in basically at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. So when you do your problem solving, how much of your imagination are you using as well?
I have a great imagination, so I'm using it a lot because I was never on social media. Mm-hmm. And trying to get through a lot of the programs and learn how to use them. I would let my imagination take me away so that my frustration would go out in various scenarios so I wouldn't throw my computer across the room. But I don't know. My imagination, I guess, just continues to go on and on.
No, I think that's an important thing. And to our listeners out there, if you don't mind, that to our listeners, our author here today is in her 80s. So, and I know she doesn't sound it, and she definitely doesn't look it, but so to be able to have the sharpness of mind to continue to have such an imagination, I think speaks volumes in and of itself. But I also believe that it's something that our children need to also be able to understand and to develop. In my process or my profession as an educator, I find that today's children don't have as strong of an imagination as we did as children. And I think that might be detrimental to them. What do you think? I
agree. Mm-hmm. I totally agree, because they don't have time to have an imagination. They're scheduled. Their whole day is totally scheduled, or they're on their computers, or they're on their iPhones. And, I'm not saying that these things are bad. I think they're very good, but I think they have to be regulated and as far as time goes, so that they do have time to just sit and create. Being able to create, whether just taking and giving them a box and a spoon and say, now what can you do with this? Just simple things. You don't have to get elaborate, or just sitting down and discussing problem solving situations. Now, what would you do if, or how would you handle this if this happened? Just being able to take the time to think.
Yeah. And I think, and it also goes back to just being given books and even books without pictures, because then you're able to come with your mind's eye, create the pictures that you're really looking at, that you're reading about, as opposed to it being given to you. And I think that's kind of the drawback of the internet and social media. Everything is instantaneous. So like you said, you don't have to think about what this looks like, because the picture's right there in front of you. You don't have to imagine what things look like, because again, it's just given to you whether you want it or not. So I think that's something that we probably need to reintroduce to our students, just giving them books without pictures and say, okay, what do you see when you read this?
Right. Here's my contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm developing a YouTube program of Let's Read Together. And I have developed small video clips that have captions so that the children can read along. I was talking to my daughter about how younger children are not allowed on Facebook or Instagram, and I needed to develop something on YouTube. And she remembered how I had bought her books when she was young that had records, and she would follow along the book and listen to the record. And so I'm showing the little video along with the book. But maybe it will spark their imagination.
Well, but at the same time, that's using the current technology in a positive way, in a productive way that hadn't been done before. And I think a lot of students are used to that, because that's what they do in school now anyway. A lot of the books that they're given are either audio books, or they have videos with captions, so that they're reading it as they're listening to build up their phonemic awareness. So there are purposes for this type of thing.
Right.
Where did you get the title for this book series? Where is Lusair, or what is Lusair?
Well, it's just a window of time that the children walk through. So the air is loose as they're walking through the window. The title came. When I retired, I was writing, and I joined writing groups and learned to hone my craft. But after a few years, my husband became blind, and so we had to pick up a new way of life. And I put my writing away for like 15 years. And I had written a little story about Rudy. And so after my husband died, a friend sent me an invitation to Richard Paul Evans Ranch to a writer's retreat. And it was a week before the retreat. So I had a week to decide whether I should go, to buy my ticket, and to see if they would accept me. And this was after my husband died. And my life was really empty, because I was a full-time caregiver, and I lost my best friend. So I went to the retreat and took that little story and wrote and learned. Richard was a very good mentor, still is. And the reason I picked the title Scaredy is because going out there alone, my husband and I traveled a lot, but we hadn't traveled for 15 years, and I never traveled alone.
Right.
And I was scared. I was really afraid. And that title came to me because of that, and because of the story itself.
You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guest today is silversmith and author Sharon Leino, creator of the book series, The Adventures in Lusair. Now, and I can imagine that another reason, or maybe a fortunate happenstance of calling it Scaredy, was also to appeal to a younger reader, because that's kind of the language that they use. Instead of saying I'm afraid, they would say I'm scared, or you're a scaredy cat and things. So they know that language, and so they would be easier for them to pick it up.
Correct. I had a friend who is a writer say that I am able to capture the children's language. And I think it's because my husband said I never grew up.
I think there's something to that, that in order to live a long life, you have to stay young at heart. And so, hey, if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. How often do you get a chance to read some of these books to, I assume you have grandchildren and so forth?
My grandchildren are adults.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. Maybe great-grands?
Well, and I have a great-grandbaby, Oliver, and he is just 2.
Okay.
So he will hopefully be hearing them from his parents when he's older, because I don't know if I'll be around that long.
Well, with the book on grief, now that you mentioned about your husband's passing, how much of that book was influenced by that experience?
Well, it was that experience, my husband's grief, and then when my younger brother died, his grandchildren were just brokenhearted. And after witnessing, I still can see them in my mind and the grief they went through. And it's my last book that I'll write, and it's a very difficult book to write.
I'm sure.
And I use Rudy's grief, because his grandmother died, and how they go through the valley of despair, and how his friends help him to overcome this whole thing. So the first book is Scaredy, and that is printed. The second book is Wandering Years, and that just came out. This is to add a young girl to the group, and she just doesn't listen. She acts before she thinks, and so she has to learn with the help of her friends in Lusair how to listen.
A 10, 11-year-old that doesn't listen? What? Nonsense.
Can't be.
It has to be in a fantasy world.
Right. And so then the third book is being edited, and it's about Billy's anger and how people are attacking him and how his friends support him. So.
And again, these are all situations and emotions that students they go through, and whether they're elementary age, grades K-5, or they're middle school, or even in high school, and even adults, they go through all these things. So I think there's something for everybody to be able to take from this series.
Well, I've had adults really enjoy the book also, and the children just have been waiting for the second book to come out, and so the ones that I'm in contact with have really enjoyed it.
Good, and I can see why. I mean, they're very quick reads. I mean, there is about 130 pages or so, but it's a quick read. So
yes,
and it's something that, like I said, it's something that families can sit around reading to their children, and everybody can read together.
Right. In this world, we're busy.
Yeah.
Everyone's too busy to sit too long. And so I made sure that the books are short. I made sure that the words are readable. And I included complex sentences, just a few, so that the children would get used to those. But a lot of them are very short and simple sentences.
I know I mentioned in the rejoin very briefly about you being an amateur silversmith. So talk to us a little bit about that. How did that come about, and does that also have any influence on your writing, or vice versa?
It really is a separate thing that I do. I started silversmithing first, before the writing. because when my husband was blind, I didn't leave him because if I did, he would sleep.
Right.
So we would have audiobooks, and we would go out in the garage because that's where I did my torching with the silver, and we would listen. I would create the jewelry while he listened to the books, or we both listened to the books. I had a wonderful gal from France who taught me it's been a love of my life, is using that torch and melting silver. But now I think that God gave me another gift of writing because my hand is getting a little bit shaky to continue to do too much of that.
I can imagine. You don't want to burn anything down accidentally. And it's not that we're encouraging young children to get fire in their hands or anything, but I think it just goes to show that you can pick up a hobby no matter what age you are, just to keep yourself occupied so that you're not on social media all day, every day, that there are other things that you can do and things that you can do to utilize your imagination.
Well, and I think that people really have talent that they don't know. I worked until I retired. I never did anything in art. I just, when I was working, my writing was mostly writing programs for like Title I or reading programs. And I mean, it was all just work. But when you retire and you have the time, then and you're willing to try, because I also tried pottery, which I love, but my bowls on the wheel would be lopsided and I couldn't keep them so they looked good. But if we just keep trying, and if we teach that to our children at a young age and give them the opportunity to use paints or crayons or whatever in art that they can do. There's a lot of things that can develop that imagination with children.
And have you ever had the desire to do any readings in your local schools?
I haven't had time.
Oh, well.
Well, first you write the book, right?
Right.
And you have to be writing the second one. And then you have to market. And that is almost a full-time job. I haven't written in 2 months, and I've got to get back to my writing because I have been trying to learn how to do all these programs so I can make reels on Instagram and YouTube. Now, the younger people probably can do all these in a snap, but it really takes me a little bit of time to do them. So, no, I haven't, but I also went on a book tour in California, and we did it was really a promotional tour where each bookstore did videos on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And so now that that's all over, I can get back to my writing, and I can contact friends at the library and do some readings at the library.
Do you ever question, whether it's from your experience or from some of the things that you write about in the books, do you ever question whether the way that the world currently thinks is somewhat backwards?
I guess that's why I wrote the books the way I did, because it just seems that the thinking of the world is just really changing. And we're forgetting how to get along with each other. We're forgetting how to have compassion for each other. Everything is a challenge. Every statement is challenged, and that kindness is gone, and everything is political. I have friends who quit watching the news, because of the politics. But I think that we can make changes in our world, in our communities, by being kind, by helping others, by reaching out and doing things that need to be done and not waiting for things to be done. We have a food pantry at church. We feed the poor and hungry every week. Our community in Bellevue, we have a group called BASS. It's Bellevue Area Social Services, and we help people find housing. We try and help them with their bills. There's a lot that each person can do in their own neighborhood, in their own town, if they would just take the time.
That's a really good point to make right there, that there's plenty that you can do in your own neighborhood if you just take the time to look for it. How can we get our hands on your books?
I have an author page, Sharon Leino, author.com, and you can purchase the book there, or they're on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles and in local bookstores. Oh,
excellent. And I think that it would be something that would be very worthwhile for you to have because of the lessons that are within the books themselves. And again, it doesn't just talk about the problems of bullying and things like that, but there's some real solutions, and it shows you the process. And I think that's what's really important. Students need to see the process of problem solving and not just that being told you have to solve the problem. They have to see the process so that it's something that they can do on their own when the time comes.
Yes, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It does take time and effort.
So if you had to leave our audience with a final thought about building self-confidence and working through difficult emotions, what would that thought be?
My thought, I guess, would be to just really take time alone first and really think through what is going on. And then I would talk to my friends and discuss things. And if it was too personal, then I would seek out similar situations online. And I also pray for my solutions.
I think that's very important to note. So it's basically you want to develop and utilize your imagination. You want to seek out good friends and close friends who are encouraging and supportive. And you want to, I guess, above all else, depending on what your belief system is, you want to be able to pray about certain things as well, and for clarity, and to be able to get those answers that you're looking for.
Correct.
We would definitely like to thank our guest today, author Sharon Leino, creator of the book series, The Adventures in Lusair, for coming onto our show today.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your having me here. It's been fun.
Oh, no, it's definitely our pleasure to have you here. And like I said, I think your book series is right on time in this age of dealing with mental illness and mental health issues, especially among our children, with everything that we see going on in the news and so forth. So, again, thank you for being able to make yourself available for us. And once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.